the argument completely. Cassandra rolled her eyes and turned away, picking up the ringing telephone. Trotter's Independent Traders. Cassandra speaking. How may I help you? She listened for a moment, her brow furrowing. I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well, sir. There's a lot of shouting. Well, go in the kitchen, then. Dell barked. He turned back to Raquel, his anger suddenly deflating, replaced by that manic, desperate optimism that had kept him afloat his entire life. Don't worry, sweetheart. Don't worry about a thing. Look, I've worked it all out. Raquel crossed her arms, unconvinced. You're serious? I am deadly serious. I've worked out a way in which we can make 100,000 pounds. Cash, tax-free. Now, we take that money, we invest it wisely. Invest it wisely? Rodney scoffed. You? Yes, Rodney, wisely. And before you know where you are, you and Cassandra can buy a nice little gaff of your own, and me and Raquel can get back on the property ladder. We'll be back on top. Rodney sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right, go on, then. What's the master plan this time? Are we smuggling diamonds and frozen chickens? Selling Eiffel Tower souvenirs made of plastic spoons? Dell grinned, pointing to the television screen where Jonathan Ross was enthusiastically waving a glittering gold card. I'm going to apply to go on that new game show, Dell announced proudly. The Gold Rush. Rodney stared at him. Then he let out a short, incredulous laugh. Did I say something amusing? Dell asked, offended. Derek, Raquel said slowly, as if speaking to a child. Last night, we were watching that very show. One of the questions was, who introduced the potato to England? And you shouted out, King Edward. I didn't hear the question properly. Dell defended himself, his cheeks flushing. I thought he asked what kind of potato it was. Look, Dell, Rodney pleaded. If you desperately want to appear on the telly, why don't I try and get you on something more simple, like stars in their eyes? You could go on as Barry White. You've got the jewelry for it. Before Dell could launch into a tirade about his general knowledge prowess, the front doorbell rang. It was a sharp, urgent sound. Rodney opened it to find a middle-aged man standing there, looking uncomfortable in a dark suit. Dell, it's Elsie Partridge's son, Rodney called out. Elsie Partridge was the elderly woman their Uncle Albert had been living with on the coast ever since the Trotters had become millionaires and jetted off. Dell hurried to the door, his frustration evaporating into polite confusion. Well, what do you want, mate? Bit late for a social call. The man looked down at his shoes, twisting a flat cap in his hands. It's Uncle Albert, he said quietly. I'm sorry, Mr. Trotter. He passed away in his sleep last night. The silence in the flat was absolute. The television seemed to mute itself. Dell felt the blood drain from his face. The eccentric, maddening, seafaring old man with the white beard and the endless repertoire of wartime anecdotes was gone. "I'm so sorry," the man repeated. Dell swallowed hard, nodding slowly. "Right, thank you for letting us know." Chapter 4: Farewell to the Mariner. The day of the funeral was suitably gray and drizzly. The Trotter clan, dressed in their finest black attire, which for Dell meant a sharp black Italian suit that was only slightly shiny at the elbows, piled into a hired car and drove down to the coast. They arrived at a modest red brick house where the wake was being held. Dell, carrying himself with the somber dignity of a grieving patriarch, led the way. Rodney, Cassandra, Raquel, and young Damien followed closely behind. "Albert's nephews, sir," Dell announced to a man at the door. "Derek and Rodney Trotter from Peckham." A woman emerged from the hallway, offering a sad smile. "Hello, I'm Marion. I did a bit of cleaning for Albert. Lovely old man. He went on a bit, though, didn't he?" "Excuse me," Dell said, smoothly stepping into his role as master of ceremonies. "This is Cassandra. That's Rodney's wife. This is Damien, my son. And this is Raquel, my significant other." They stepped into the living room, which was crowded with elderly people drinking tea and eating dry sandwiches. "I feel bad, you know," Dell whispered to Rodney as they hovered near the buffet table, "about leaving him here on his own while we was all off globe trotting, sipping pina coladas while he was stuck in Blighty." "He wasn't on his own, Dell," Rodney reasoned. "He was with Elsie. He was happy." "Yeah, but Elsie was in that rest home, weren't she? For the last 6 months of his life. He must have been lonely. I just wish that we'd taken him with us when we went to Barbados and all them other places, giving him a bit of sun on his old bones. We did ask him, Dell," Rodney reminded him gently. "But if you remember, the ancient mariner who claimed he'd been around the world more times than a Russian satellite never actually possessed a passport." Dell smirked despite the gloom. "Good job Hitler didn't find that out. Our war effort would have been in right trouble. Rodney, the old sod, only had his own monogram brandy glass, didn't he? He loved his cognac. Just to keep the cold at bay, he always said." Rodney smiled. A tall man with a severe expression approached them. "Pardon me. I am Roland. I was married to Albert's niece, Eileen." Introductions were made again. The atmosphere was heavy with the awkward small talk of funerals. "Well, I suppose we'll all miss him in our own way, eh?" Dell offered, raising a tiny glass of sherry. "Missing him already?" Roland nodded stiffly. "I'll tell you one thing we won't miss, though." Dell chuckled, hoping to lighten the mood. "All those bloody wartime sagas. During the war. God, he could talk the hind legs off a donkey." Roland bristled, his face hardening. "Actually, we used to love hearing about his past. He was a hero." "That's right," an elderly woman nearby chimed in fiercely. "Couldn't get enough of it. A true patriot." Dell realized he had misread the room spectacularly. Yeah, but